Craigslist, a place where you can find almost anything. Need furniture? It's there. Looking for a new car? Easy. Or maybe you're searching for a quick gig to make some extra cash. It's all right at your fingertips. But as convenient as Craigslist might be, sometimes it hides something far darker. Beneath its surface lies a world of deception and danger. For some, this simple platform became the beginning of a nightmare. Today, we'll dive into 3 chilling, real-life encounters shared by real people on Reddit. These aren't just cautionary tales or urban legends. They're first-hand accounts of meetings that went horribly wrong, leaving the people involved shaken, traumatized, and lucky to have escaped. Viewer discretion is advised. From a house viewing that turned into a trap, to a car deal that could have ended in tragedy, and a babysitting job with sinister intentions, these stories will make you think twice about trusting strangers online. Let's begin. I was in the middle of a stressful apartment search, scrolling endlessly through Craigslist listings, when I stumbled across what felt like a dream come true. It was a cozy 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, with rent that was almost too good to be true. It wasn't just affordable, it looked perfect in the pictures. Freshly painted walls, a manicured yard, and plenty of space. Compared to everything else I'd seen in my price range, it seemed like a steal. Without a second thought, I reached out to the poster. The landlord, or at least the person claiming to be the landlord, responded quickly. They seemed friendly and eager to show the place. We agreed on a time for me to come by and take a look, which just added to my excitement. Finally, I thought, my housing search might be coming to an end. The day of the viewing arrived, and as I drove into the neighborhood, everything seemed perfect. The streets were clean and quiet, the homes well maintained, and the area had that idyllic suburban charm. But as I got closer to the address, I started to notice small things that didn't line up. The house itself looked different. The shutters were broken, the paint was peeling, and the lawn was completely overgrown, nothing like the photos in the listing. There was no "for rent" sign, no realtor's lockbox on the door. In fact, the whole place looked like it had been abandoned for months. I considered turning around right then, but part of me thought, maybe the inside is in better shape. Maybe they just didn't maintain the exterior. I decided to give it a chance, but I kept my guard up. As I parked my car and got out, a man stepped out from inside the house. He looked scruffy, unkempt clothes, hair that hadn't been combed in weeks, and a smile that immediately made me feel uneasy. He waved and walked toward me, introducing himself as the property owner. "Come on inside," he said. "You have to see the place. It's a great deal." His tone was off, overly eager, almost like he was trying to rush me into the house. My instincts immediately told me something wasn't right, but before I could respond, something else caught my attention. Parked just a few houses down was an old beat-up van. Inside, I could see a man sitting in the driver's seat, watching us. He wasn't trying to be discreet. His eyes were locked on me, unblinking, like he was waiting for something. That's when it hit me. I wasn't safe here. The whole situation suddenly felt like a trap. I knew I had to get out, but I didn't want to let on that I was suspicious. Keeping my voice calm, I told the man I had left something in my car and needed to grab it before I came inside. "Don't worry about it," he said, taking a step closer. "You'll want to see the place first. It's worth your time." His insistence sent a chill down my spine, but I managed to keep my composure. "I'll just be a second," I said, already walking back to my car. My heart was pounding. I could feel both men's eyes on me, the one in the van and the one standing by the house. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door, jumped inside, and locked it behind me. As soon as I started the engine, the man from the house began walking toward my car, his expression changing from friendly to something more menacing. I didn't wait to find out what he wanted. I backed out of the driveway and sped off, glancing in my rearview mirror to see both men watching me drive away. Once I was safely home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd narrowly escaped something terrible. I started doing some research and found reports of similar scams in the area. Criminals were using fake rental listings to lure people to abandoned properties where they'd be robbed or worse. Everything about this rental had been a setup, and I had walked right into it. Looking back, I realize how close I came to becoming one of those victims. My instincts saved me that day, and I'm grateful I listened to them. If you ever find yourself in a situation that feels wrong, trust your gut. No rental deal, no meeting, no opportunity is worth putting yourself at risk. A few years ago, I was in the market for a used car. Like a lot of people trying to save some money, I turned to Craigslist hoping to find a decent deal. After browsing through a handful of overpriced or shady-looking listings, I came across one that seemed perfect. A reliable sedan with low mileage, in excellent condition, and priced just below market value. The pictures were clear, the description was detailed, and the seller seemed polite and professional in their messages. It felt like I'd found a hidden gem. The seller responded quickly when I reached out, answering all my questions and offering to meet up later that evening to show me the car. I suggested meeting during the day in a public place, like a grocery store parking lot or a gas station, but they told me that wouldn't work. They claimed they worked late and it would be more convenient to meet after dark in an empty parking lot near their neighborhood. Something about it felt off, but against my better judgment, I agreed. After all, the car seemed perfect, and I thought, what's the worst that could happen? The parking lot was exactly as they described, dark, empty, and eerily quiet. When I pulled in, there was only one car there, a silver sedan parked near the back. As I approached, a man stepped out and waved at me. He looked normal enough, dressed casually, and even gave me a friendly smile as I parked a few feet away. I rolled my window down slightly, enough to talk, but not enough to seem vulnerable. As he started walking toward me, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Another man stepped out of the same car. He was bigger, dressed in a dark hoodie, and moving with purpose. My mind started racing. Why were there two people? The ad had only mentioned one seller. I told myself to stay calm, but every instinct I had was screaming that this wasn't right. Before I could say anything, the second man pulled out a knife and walked straight up to my window. "Hand over your wallet and phone," he demanded, his voice low but threatening. The first man stood behind him, watching me carefully, ready to back him up if I tried anything. For a moment, I froze. My brain was struggling to process what was happening. I was here to buy a car, not to get robbed. Then it hit me. I was still in my car and the engine was running. My hands were shaking, but I realized I had one advantage. They hadn't gotten inside. Without thinking twice, I threw the car into reverse. The tires screeched as I backed up quickly, putting some distance between me and them. The man with the knife lunged at the door, trying to grab the handle, but I slammed it into drive and hit the gas, speeding out of the parking lot as fast as I could. My heart was pounding, and my hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly they hurt. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away, on a well-lit main road surrounded by other cars. Once I felt safe, I pulled over and called the police, still shaking as I explained what had just happened. When the officers arrived, they took my statement and assured me I'd done the right thing by leaving. They told me that this wasn't the first time they'd heard of something like this. Similar setups had been reported in the area, scammers using fake Craigslist ads to lure buyers into isolated spots where they could be robbed, and in some cases, assaulted. They commended me for staying in my car and acting quickly. About 6 years ago, I was looking for a part-time job to help cover my bills. Babysitting seemed like the perfect gig: flexible hours, decent pay, and relatively easy work. While browsing Craigslist, I came across an ad that seemed tailor-made for me. It was for evening babysitting, watching 2 kids while the parents were out. The pay was fair, and the hours worked perfectly with my schedule. Excited, I reached out to the poster, who responded almost immediately. They seemed polite and professional in their messages, and we arranged to meet at their home to discuss the details. The day of the meeting arrived, and I pulled up to the address provided. The house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, exactly the kind of place you'd expect a family to live. It was modest, but well maintained, with a neat yard and warm lighting coming from the windows. Everything about it seemed normal. When I knocked on the door, a man in his 40s answered. He introduced himself as the father and apologized right away, explaining that his wife was running late, but would be home soon. He invited me inside, saying we could start discussing the job while waiting for her. At first, I hesitated. Something about meeting only one parent felt a little strange, but I didn't want to be rude. So, I stepped inside. That's when things started to feel off. The house was eerily quiet. There were no toys lying around, no children's artwork on the walls, no sign that kids actually lived there. The living room was almost sterile. Bare furniture, no family photos, nothing that suggested a family environment. It wasn't messy, but it also didn't feel lived in. The man offered me a seat, and as I sat down, my unease grew. He started making small talk, but the questions quickly became personal. He asked if I lived alone, if anyone knew I was there, and how far away I lived. Every answer I gave felt like I was giving him information I shouldn't be. I tried to steer the conversation back to the babysitting job, asking about the kids' ages and routines, but he only gave vague answers. He didn't even seem interested in my experience working with children. At that point, my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. I decided I needed to leave, so I stood up and told him I had to grab something from my car. That's when his demeanor changed completely. He stepped in front of the door, blocking my path, and insisted that I stay until his wife got home. His tone was no longer friendly, it was firm, almost demanding. My heart started racing. I could feel the panic rising, but I tried to stay calm. I repeated that I needed to grab something from my car, this time stepping toward the door. He didn't move right away, but I didn't give him a chance to argue. I squeezed past him, yanked the door open, and bolted outside. I ran to my car, jumped in, and locked the doors as fast as I could. The man stood in the doorway, watching me, but he didn't follow. I sped off, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Once I was far enough away to feel safe, I pulled over to catch my breath. My heart was pounding as I replayed the events in my mind. Something about that situation was deeply wrong. I decided to check the ad again, but when I searched for it, it was gone. Deleted. That only made me more suspicious. I started digging further and realized the address hadn't even been included in the original listing. It had been sent to me privately after I responded. The whole experience left me shaken. I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if I had stayed, if I hadn't trusted my instincts and left when I did. To this day, I don't know who that man was or what his intentions were, but I'm certain they weren't good.